Hello, America. This is critical. The news, don't take it personal. Please just help. You guys attach me to fake words, fake ties to other people. And you attach people around me to fake words, fake ties to other people. You did that when I caught you. Did that forcing a since proven child abuser, leader of the kids, principal. Because the former director of the FBI, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in his defendant capacities, has a bunch of federal criminal code defendants in 2006, leading up to the 2006, and since then, and leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and since then, the same people that have been interstates, that have been intercities, and also on and off campuses, including private schools, public schools, and homeschool families, and everyone's neighbors, and their relativity to locations like locations next to the state capitol, locations next to the state judicial branch offices, next to the state prison offices, along routes, and roles with corners, where and how fact keeping nature oriented. Slavery is a serious thing that not once has been treated with seriousness. And that has been, everyone had to pretend other as rules with the breaching method, blaming the breaching method on other things and or valuing it while being naive qualities of fact-cheating nature. Qualities of fact-cheating nature that can't defend their premises treatments, their qualities of fact-cheating nature, their sequence treatments, their identity treatments, their time relativity treatments. And us at the same time from what exploited that originally and still. Our founding parents left us, they're actually recorded leaving us to discern how they had to leave what was entrenched. We had to begin with what was entrenched below everyone as sophistication, more finite than everyone, and greater than everyone, individually grouped and together. Every modern nation was born as an identity of sophistication that had to begin extorted, fact, nature, quality, enslaved. And more that became only capable of blaming other things, other themselves, and self-value in contrast to pretend others to themselves too. Because we have the answers for what caused slavery. A predicate acts delivery system method. I am not a lawyer, I'm not a police form, I'm not a criminal. There's also evidence how the lawyers were and are involved with that and juxtaposed with the physical delusions. So they prevented free speech at the locations, no. At locations further where the sciences are, no. And then further, that has to hide the and value hurt or having to hurt more and more. Correlation nature is actually inherent active and progressive means at all locations, like parks, like corners of streets. Still that. Um, Infrastructural pathology forced, so to speak, forced with that slavery method against our founding parents and against all the colonists sickly distinctly, the same way it was still sickly distinctly being had and having been sustained against Native Americans. To make them fight with each other, they had first had to be retreated, made no longer capable of, you know, using the ground itself as the most critical part, as one of the most critical parts beyond our own volume science, which is native pure. So increasingly, it is valued to discern how Native Americans are native value distinctly from our own. And that answer why that how that is relevant also to the breaching method, the predicate acts delivery system method, which is more so for and as an effective criminal insidiousness propagation method, criminal insidiousness delivery system method, identities of criminal insidiousness like wrongdoers, identities of like wrongdoing itself. This is where nature is value slash value as nature simultaneously. And that is where and how the slash, the solidus. I believe it has other names. It might have 5 names. I read that on Wikipedia. And so I'm going to put a link right here. And this is a link. I'm going to type, this is the link to the scientist who was speaking about the metaphor of water coming through an electrical wire. I spelled speaking wrong. Oh, should I take the time to spell check? Going through an electrical wire. I'm saying value/value progression is the metaphor that nature is demonstrating we need to use. Value progression / identity is. And this is also where and how we are 1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. So how could we be either one or no? Because one is where and how one is self-generating. And so we have to discern the hyper-simultaneous distinctly from the simultaneous. So being an individual is being a simultaneous nature. It is also being a sequence nature, is being / sequence nature. And in the opposite sequence too, the same reason the identity of what is. Hi, Chrissy. This is just a link to it. So I'm trying to, in that link, in other words, I'm speaking about using as evidence the nature itself, because this is about English and languages, not just the English language. Like, for example, the predicate is a nature distinct from the subject. And they share a nature, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. This is about the electrical engineering of the human fact treatment nature. So they have questions in the news, like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. They bring up critical race theory and see that a breaching method measures and maintains for motivations distinct from the motivations of our own, where and how they're blaming other things, others and or themselves. The breaching methods rolls with slavery. So since founding, our founding parents didn't have free speech. So they had only they had in layers laws set forth, enforced, where people had to use words and entertain criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments that couldn't be entertained in the locations, areas, and states, and or the identity of the entire group, which no longer is colony. Now it's America, but it was still America started from that which was entrenched, still effectively that way. Complete possession over the quality / IES over every location, area, and state of the quality of fact treatment nature. So they had slavery, they had witch trials. And see, we have these problems today too, because we have slavery and witch trials, and we have those subjects separated. And see, since ancient times, people have been, as per re-engineered scientific method. So rather than keeping scientific method with what is true always, and using exceptions, because there are distinct identities of exception nature. And then you can't teach about what nature, in other words, these are our short words proper. See how locations, areas, and states like campuses, the news media has roles. attaching people with fabricating audio and video. And then we have to hide that from other nations, or we won't be able to defend ourselves at fact, treatment, nature oriented levels, or not levels. They want it to be in need. They have those physical delusions where they think discern hierarchies where there were never any. Any kid, anybody, and honest could look and know that from discerning, the areas around them, especially New York City. It was designed that everyone missed how they left out the breaching methods rules with the torture and the not only didn't have free speech, they had other speech forced to entertain criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments and collusion. So the method was simultaneously knowing that nature would continue to demonstrate that the breaching method was and is responsible for that, which is still manifest. It is still measuring and maintaining people and not blaming other things other than ourselves for that, per what I call, per phenomena. And it exploits overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the branches of government that have been originally and still individually grouped and together methods to hide where and how they've been used remotely. And this includes uses of everybody's family members, people next to them, where they're going to go, and people's neighbors. This is a little trap that forces people to use other people's names. Like, see, we're not supposed to have things like they're not supposed to use hearsay in courts because it doesn't coordinate with what they promised, which was never liberated. In other words, and then there are still styles pretending other because they're backed into identities of positive and negative treatments after and while since the youngest ages, having blamed other things, others, and ourselves for the real causes. Again, of negative nature, progressive acts and natures, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoers, wrongdoing itself. See, these are words and phrases that lawyers and that judges were supposed to use properly. But they were raised with physical delusions. They were raised by this method that measures and maintains the identity of sophistication that was supposed to blame the breaching method. In other words, discern. We are supposed to discern. Science reveals that the predicate act and that the predicate, I should say, predicate act / predicate, or in both sequences, they can be studied distinctly too, not distinctly in some things because of how they have a semi-nature relationship, just like all the notes of Western music, other music, they just have different breakdown of measurement. But fundamentally, the sound, where you stretch, like on a guitar, for example, or on a piano, where the keys on the piano, the whole notes, they're right next to each other. Or they're two semitones away from each other. There's a semitone between them, but two of the notes don't have a semitone between them. And that's per reasons that can be. For example, that's per reasons for how relevant. The same way, it's the same volume science. Where and how we are individual grouped and together. Where and how there is the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall with physical plans. So in the link I gave there, that guy says that the cell nucleus at the atomic level is to be remembered as a place. So it's the place of the proton and the neutron. And the neutron is neutral. And I've been teaching you N stands for neutrality. M stands for mother. And O, right after M and O, stands for omega. A stands for alpha. See alpha as the root of alphabet. And bet on what you really, your soul really honestly and contemplating, trying to contemplate hard to get the perfect answer, not for a test. More, I mean, more stronger than any test you might take or like that. Contemplating what really the hyper simultaneous wants and needs as positive per its system of positive and negative. See, no a criminal insidiousness nature like a wrongdoer is going to make positive and negative treatments, both positive and negative treatments that are both negative. There are more than one identity. There are semi-natures of positive. In other words, both, I mean, simultaneously, both positive and negative. In other words, an identity has a relationship to positive and negative simultaneously and hyper simultaneously. And so our short words, rather than debating about the debatable, we're supposed to use what is actually recorded true. A breaching method had employed since before our founding parents were even born in America, and before other countries' founders were born too. England doesn't even remember the history of English. There are proofs because the sciences were criminally re-engineered, but roles with that were missing. No, they were just adapting to the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that they had to respond to as fact treatment nature, not fathoming how anyone would even have, let alone, organize others to the furtherance of an agenda of hiding what nature really is demonstrating. See, but they were probably going to be caught because there are proofs that the ancients, before the semi-ancients, knew, they understood about criminal insidiousness. This is how we've inherited the republic for which we stand, as itself as an identity of sophistication that is beyond that of the that associated with the narratives regarding how it was actually handed to us, because those narratives are also self-valuing roles with the words our founding parents had to speak and the things they had to entertain that they didn't want entertained and that they wouldn't have spoken. They had to hide their roles, getting the Constitution, say the word, getting it writ, that they were going to have the Constitution unabridged and read as and by the proper nature. This means that they're not going to be which article before, which law you refer to. They're not going to have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, slavery, and with even Jim Crow laws. Even when they speak about it now, it is inherent with active and progressive and sequence shifts, self-value. In other words, the defenses of time treatments. So increasingly abridged sciences value them having been abridged. Informal precedents and statutes with the formal ones. So Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. These are also uses of elections locations, town offices, Weathersfield's town offices, Wethersfield State Judicial Branch offices, locations next to it, are all people that were involved with offensively with evidence reception, identity reception, positive and negative reception, federal rules of evidence crimes, roles with interbranch switching names, fabricating audio and video into databases, as family members and as locations that are used remotely differentially by the other countries and by the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, but also killers and just people next to the body stumping spots are already were involved with just that insidiousness that is conjunctive to and has the value of all these styles of logic, increasingly directly relevant to where and how at the youngest ages. The only proper words, the only proper answer /s is that slavery was caused by a predicate auxiliary system method /s. And see, before that even was an issue, and it is an issue presented, one has to discern that against Native Americans and against the ground. Because even though the Native Americans are, even though the ground is worth, we're more than the ground as colonists. Now, as Americans who are not Native Americans, but we're still not the native system as our humanity, while we are individual grouped and species. And it is about, if you really follow honesty, is about how the invisible but still discernible has a hyperconjunction to it that is making more and more the identity of hyper simultaneous as an identity, as a distinct identity of forever nature that is only increasing. Only the extent of it is debatable, extent /s. But see, originally and still, such would be and is debated offensively in conjunction to and where and how each location has actually inherent active, progressive, correlative means by our short words, those capable of having and revealing revelations and evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere, which are the ancients knew how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere about being a quality of fact-keeping nature and revealing that quality more and more. See, they would be able to discern the identities of the campuses, of the branches of government individually grouped and together right where we live. See, the ground was tactically denatured before, so we have to understand these methods against the Native Americans, how they were bound. And thank God, again, as the same methods against the colonists. Even though they employed the colonists against the Native Americans, they applied the Native Americans against the Native Americans. We have the same enemy, rather than valuing that. Even though it's not another country, it is a fact-keeping nature-oriented one. So boxing is fun when species fights, all each one for it. And so when we're in a negative value nature progression, more and more we value the species body or group bodies, group difference, species difference, told, and made more important than individual, finite. That's where the quality comes from. See, they just have a stealing our words. Then they want to debate about passions and emotions. They want to debate about when you hear people in the news say, "Oh, that's only because of that. That's their only emotion. Oh, that's just because of that." They're forcing a quality of fact keeping nature that can't defend itself and afford mandated law followed at any location and or through their wire people who answer the phones for them. So they have the investigators who sit there and read things that they know are fake, and then they pretend it's personal when you tell them separate me and others from fake words with yourselves and others, because they also fabricated emails. So, and they're so quick to use other people's names because they also sequence shift. These sequence shifting styles, wire crime rules come from when we are youngest ages, and everyone against everyone for the breaching method. Hi, everybody. So this is just about America, and this is critical because they've been speaking about critical race theory, and theory is part of that word. And so they're measuring and maintaining how they had obligations as scientists to explain actually what caused slavery, which is a breaching method. I'm not a lawyer, but it's a predicate act, just delivery system method. It was a delivery system of criminal insidiousness natures of identities themselves as mass wrongdoers. So those are people making treatments of positive and negative then, the same way they're doing it now with news too. That was criminally foreign influenced by a breaching method. So rather than teaching about the breaching method, they are pretending people are making theories. They are pretending they don't see evidences. And they're preventing people from reporting things that the actually mandated law recorded is forced to people to tell on. And these are the people that are telling on others first because they're getting so they can get people from the youngest ages involved with wire crimes, falsified police reports, their families going and speaking with detectives, and everyone put fake words with each other. And then they put fake words with the kids who don't communicate with them because they're all liars. We never had a location area in the state that wasn't criminally foreign influenced, and it measured and maintained where and how each, in other words, that basic simple logic, criminal foreign influences were behind. A fact cheap in nature breaching method was behind. Identity theft, frauds, slanders method was behind slavery. So I'm not bringing up prejudice because it was against slavery against everyone. So if they want to bring up prejudice, they leave out how it was against everyone. Because even then we will get to the real solutions. Because science has not been speaking for any city across America, let alone New York City, let alone Chicago, Illinois. No, where they had the opportunity to have the whole country. Oh, Scruff McGuff, Chicago, Illinois. Used to hear him when I was a little kid. I never wrote to him. There are proofs that some of those people involved this is a method since they were kids. Some of the people involved with Washington D.C. and the World Trade Center, interstates. This is colleges and universities, medical campuses and fire campuses kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite acts, progressive lies, identity theft, frauds, slanders, type fact cheating nature things, right at times and through time. It shows up. Excuse me. That's how. In other words, it shows how they've been prevented, what was actually recorded and led up to the World Trade Center. Our side had roles. So the World Trade Center has roles with investigations all the time since before the World Trade Center attack, with insurance and things like that. All private locations, they were a certain type of victim. See, slavery was about certain types of victim predator. Where with the crackers, the person holding the whip was a breaching screen, weapon, and tool of a way worse that was making sure that would stay the outcome, including now, when we refer to that, we're leaving out the breaching method. We're leaving out that which knew and understands why and how our electrical engineering works as a species, as we are actually individual, grouped, and species identity of volume /S, where volume equals value as nature slash nature as value, and where and how more and more forever nature is being demonstrated, how it is actually self-generating and hyper, in the words. We have a distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneously hyper a special relationship to the rest of space slash existence, which is our identity of relationship to the hyper simultaneous. The hyper simultaneous is defined distinct from, well, as the value of being an individual, being grouped, and being the species volumes, invisible but still discernible. Physical differences, where they are manifest, where we are, fact, human nature, quality, where they are making treatments of black and white, it is evidence where and how they left out and leave out. How the breaching method forced black and white to be defined. White, black, you know. But we have to describe if it was who it was. We have to narrow down when there are bad things happen. In other words, bad things were employed to happen. Native Americans against Native Americans. They denatured the ground. They forced them into value progression systems with countries already having the same thing happened already, individually grouped and together. Humanity's volume is increasingly now systems that are tactically not native and only trained, hurt, forced, tricked, persuaded, only fathom capable of defending themselves as a fact, human nature styles, premises, treatments that can't defend that and also at the same time. So increasingly Native Americans' difference, they feel it the wrong way. So when someone's fighting for rights, actually, truly, honestly, fighting, in other words, they use and should preventing it, but the short words that explain, the Constitution is supposed to be valued unabridged, and the nature of the law is supposed to be valued other than it was in his being and having been valued per roles with that locations, areas, and states entrenched before us. That has nothing to do. In other words, all we have to do is admit what is actually recorded. Science with passions and emotions pretended it cared about science. Right, where and how and when at locations. The only voices that could speak for science, where and how, there are locations, areas, and states. There are kids in New York City. There are adults who already been through it. Either fake education, worse than politicized, but everyone's only capable of calling that politics. Just like they were only capable of calling reality that reality described by the crackers. And so now they have you all crackers. In other words, when you make opinions about the legitimacy of New York City as an identity of the ground, value slash value progression, the electrical engineering of our identity of science, of our identity of volume, where value is nature slash nature as value simultaneously, the slash being a quality of diffusion, that which we are actively value as now. Seeing the value of what is perfect that has not come is already value here now. The value of what is perfect that already came is value here now. But so we have answers that are replaced by theory. And then they're maintaining sense and sensibilities. and they're maintaining, having been maintaining, you know, aside conversations at all locations, areas, and states that contain other people's names, that contain, confessions. And no one wants to hurt anybody else. That's why it's important to understand and discern how the breaching methods laws against not only, okay, you're not allowed to speak that. What are you going to speak? There was not just that they didn't have free speech. It was a fact, cheap, and nature oriented. They set up everyone as the breaching method, sense, and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase. And they set up everyone to use their practical reason, to use Immanuel Kant's phrase. So both Jane Austen and Immanuel Kant, and since some ancient times, everyone at all locations, areas, and states has been either self-valued roles, relative to all kinds of the fact-cheaping nature. In other words, when someone says what's slavery, after we're still in that, in other words, they sickly distinctly hurt every single person's education, and then they made the contrast between education, good or not, success with money used to measure and maintain where and how our leaderships, had to hide lies to us, to hide themselves from the breaching method, that had those laws so they could sense if there's any kind of disturbance between people. They were a fact cheaping nature, oriented against each other, against themselves. They were styles of logic that couldn't afford quality on paper, quality records. This is a through time method that knew that nature would continue to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, and demonstration of how the sciences became criminally re-engineered. It is most probable that how the republic for which we stand was revealed by the sciences and the whole world working together. In fact, the alpha and omega cannot be taught properly without use of yin yang, and vice versa. This is true conversely. And this is what, again, where and how the invisible but still discernible has an identity of perfect value / value progression as the hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. It demonstrates its identity of volume's relationship to itself and the value of that. And for example, in other words, that's one of the ways it's invisible but still discernible. One third of it itself as 5, 1/3/5, distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneously bound, that same identity of hyper simultaneous forever nature that is self-generating. This came from before matter. This generated matter. This generated temporary positive and negative neutrality to generate more and more forever nature that could be still positive. That is an identity that is positive and negative. That is a simultaneous relationship to positive and negative simultaneous. Note how values have a relativity to positive and negative simultaneously too, and to identity too. See, now this is phenomenon with computers. This is phenomenon with electronics, with cellular structure, because there's a trinity here. So how, in other words, the value/value progression as the proper metaphor that should be across the globe, rather than water coming through a pipe to teach about electronics. This is also to teach about its identity of volume as value as nature/nature as value. Its identity of volume is identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. Again, which is where and how we're going to discern what is actually recorded. There is one identity of hyper simultaneous that we are obligated to discern where and how we make quality of fact cheaping natures relevant to the most critical things like slavery, like race treatments. So they have words like critical and theory being used through criminal foreign influences and with physical delusions multi-front now. The news media, both political parties, both the branches of government individually grouped together, there are methods, plural, by that breaching method, singular, that was entrenched here since before our founding parents were born. It was perfect sophistication. It's before anyone was born. Everyone was tactically pseudo-educated. It knew. See, this is nature has use by words like value progression, any phrases we could make, other than what semi-nature has. In other words, there's only one hyper simultaneous, but it is native pure. So it's, thank God, nature itself demonstrates negative value nature progressions, action natures when a group like with sciences will entertain roles with slavery. Roles blaming the real causes of it on other things, others themselves. Because nature demonstrates what's going to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures. Again, so we have to address exception nature relevant to this too, because in other words, slavery is a recorded proof that exceptions to the Constitution unabridged were entertained. They were forcing our founding parents' identities to entertain identity thefts of themselves through the only stewards of themselves allowed. Because that's how entrenched it was. So forgiveness is not to allow that. We'll give them a pass because they were afraid, because everything. The forgiveness is about just furthering. In other words, it was about a breaching method, slavery. The proofs of it are standing. We have to discern how the identity, the ground locations. Now we're indebted with physically discernible. See, there's a physically discernible. There's invisible but still discernible that we agree about. The predicate, the subject. And there is the hyper simultaneous that people haven't agreed about because that people haven't been following mandated law locations because of the crackers. Countries A through Z. Locations, areas, states A through Z. Uses of the names of countries A through Z. Use of the names of other individuals. Uses of the names of the scientists. Use of the names of positive and negative. Use of the names of sequence. See, before the order of the finite, there is science, and when we look at it all together, it reveals there's an identity of sequence nature / simultaneous nature, then distinct from, well, as itself, but distinctly as the order of the finite, the order to and as the smallest detail of anything. The order to the finite, the order to the value of the smallest things of our body. It wasn't invented by us. It's a perfect system. And it's only increasing. So that's part of the ways it's hyper invisible, but still discernible. The value of it is only increasing distinctly non-distinctly and simultaneously too. So it's invisible but still discernible. So when people have to call schools for legitimate means and needs, the people, the interbranch have been fabricating audio and video, and they've been getting away with it because when you go to courts, they've been fabricating audio and video there too. They're pretending people are trying to control conversations as means to offensively prevent them from countering themselves fabricating audio and video because themselves and their family members are having been used remotely since they were kids involved with databases, evidence reception, racketeering, worse than war crimes. When you're speaking about what black and white is about regarding the Constitution, you're speaking about what's worse than war crimes. And you guys are all arrays of styles and natures that can't defend themselves and afford someone to calmly demonstrate what is actually recorded there and now. Boxings, Frank branches bow and fall. Bill Wall, Anthony Wall, aka Romulus. Well, we must be Romulus together. Romulus and Remus are about what this is cipher / decipher. One of the proofs of it is since they left out how both for example how both Islam and Christianity were both used to defend, but also simultaneously to obfuscate and for other reasons prevented the correction of criminally foreign influence sciences and uses of them. One of the things that was there before the messengers of modern religions were and are proofs that sciences had already become separated from their functions by our human science's actual native value / value progression science / s method singular / plural as exceptions in exception nature only in demonstration of the same thing, which is how that is singularly self-generating. So alpha, an individual male, not as a father, and omega, an individual female, not as a mother. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and hyper-simultaneously. They are, too, the volume of mother, the invisible but still discernible, just like with the predicate and the subject. Adam looks more like the subject, and Eve looks more like the predicate and or the verb. For example, but see, to address this properly and English, remember the predicate act and the predicate act of the law and the predicate of English grammar. We should say the predicate act of the law and / predicate act, the predicate of English. It is value where and how they share a name. They share that word predicate because this is the value predicate, the identity of what predicate is, which is think about what a predicate act is, like mail crime, wire crimes. NBC Connecticut News, please help. And you know, former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and other agents. There's a people associated with Ian who there's an Ian on Twitter who also said he's FBI on Fox Hill as one of the people involved with corners along that street through time with the Wethersfield police, like a DeMauro family. and the others are involved with the Weathersfield police. Like 9 months ago, called, made confessions when I called back and to verify. They have more officers forging and switching names. They've made a whole bunch of falsified police reports since the World Trade Center attack. These are people also involved directly and non-directly with houses and locations, intercities, that were involved when I was a kid. People who made they put them in front of me, made them make confessions, things like that, and then they were then I ended up getting arrested with warrants and things like that because they put fake natures of ties between people, and they put people to fake locations, fake ties to complete strangers, interbranch collusion with them, and with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, investigations of that, remote uses of the businesses, the corners of people associated with the corners of the streets, you know, because that's what was going on when people were when that was being sustained against Native Americans. It was exploiting every human where they're making positive and negative treatments. We're in how we are in electrical engineering as that which is native pure. See, but now we are abridged constitution. And see, that is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, but they're also simultaneously pretending other. So they're preventing the simultaneous from being demonstrated. They're preventing mandated law and pretending they don't understand people online, for example, because they've been fabricating audio and video. They say, oh, we don't see the evidences. That's why we have to deal with our side's roles, stacking fabricated audio and video transcripts with NBC, Connecticut News, and WFSB, and Fox Connecticut News. They also have roles with the corner of Church Street and Main Street with people that are involved on off Trinity College and CCSU with predicate acts leading up to and other campuses, intercities, including child campuses and locations next to them, including people involved with forensics locations. And we'll examine this. This is where and how they had slavery relevant in Weathersfield and Hartford, in the North. Sickly distinctly in the North too, sickly distinctly in the South too, sickly distinctly in the parts of the North, sickly distinctly in the parts of the South, specifically to keep out sickly non-distinctly, not only then from being discerned, but now, because all that is to it is functional per uses of the ground locations. One of the things that is commonly is an identity theft / fraud / slander styles and methods and natures against every single person, including our founding parents, and while pretending others simultaneously. See, such can be discerned relative to that which is all telling with revelations. For example, when we see and we know in the back of the minds where we have potential to be, like that everywhere. Where we have the means to afford it, we have the elements of it right now. To admit attack to the denatured ground in the suburbs since before cars, since before our founding parents were even born, to cause negative value, nature, progressive acts, dangerous people indebted to systems and locations uses as styles of factory and premises can't defend themselves and afford locations, areas, and states to use are actually inherent active and progressive means by what is greater than and more finite than that. Distinctly, non-distinctly, but all and simultaneously and hyper simultaneously. And see, this is Earth's difference relative to the rest of space / existence. We could be systems other than that native pure, but it demonstrates it will force us from here, our value. It will force that difference of Earth's value, where positive can make more for every nature that is also positive onto itself. Note where 3 years are 1,095 days. So our quality of diffusion has 1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature with the rest of space nature. nor the plants of life with cells the way they are, with this trinity, the inherent active progressive. See how the cell walls share the body of value, all different in demonstration of the invisible, the non-distinct. See, the breaching method was sickly distinctly and is sickly distinctly to keep how non-distinctly from being discerned. Then and now, distinctly, it measures and maintains when people make critical race theory treatments, that and how there are already people that are being and having been involved with where there are doctors of mental health who make pretend people make conspiracy theories. They have their family member, whole family members working with Harvard Triage with the name Leahy, and there are a number of judges and their family members. One of them is named Killian. They've been speaking fake things into records with other courts too, and people on off the state judicial branch offices. Juxtaposed roles with child abusers, leaders of kids since before they got caught. They've been kept needing to hide the same sequence shift, finite active progressive lies with their family members and with their patients and criminals, and doctors also with them, and with physical delusions. So we have them switching and forging names and spreading lies about people and backgrounds because our investigators originally still worthless, worse than worthless, where how they are great people too simultaneously, the only ones we have to turn to. See, sickly distinctly, they have the overt criminal enterprises as victims that never had a chance. There was humanity's volume science has never been prevented. They've never been afforded a chance. So what they have, they have celebrities of various natures and stuff like that. All that they force people to entertain, speaking through others, and make opinions about others. But as a quality of fact checking, they don't even know people. They're getting involved. They're attaching their roles with the news, attaching me and others to fake words, fake ties to other people. As kids, I still didn't get a response from the principal child abusers campus. I caught more then and now involved with it. They have the policing of the campuses involved. They have programs with the kids. They still have people involved with the Cub Scouts. I thought they stopped that. They have all kinds of digital crimes with the kids on Facebook. They have the New Britain Superior Court Facebook page involved with degenerates, a whole bunch of different natures of federal crimes, rolled with a whole bunch of different falsified police reports, officers switching and forging names. Then they present a charge on paper and amend it with verbal confessions through state's attorneys that switch names too. Come on. These are the people since before the World Trade Center attack. I caught them on off Central Connecticut State University, on off their interbranch locations, affecting people with confessions also recorded. Foreign and domestic military, their uses of the deans of the kids of deans, the kids of principals, their neighbors, everyone speaking to others. Come on now, get them on paper, fix the fake news. Fake news. I'm using the phrase of President Trump, but I'm using it my own way. I'm using fake news. That's what it is. In other words, not saying, I'm not, in other words, they're also, they put the big lie, unquote, because of the styles they have, the methods they have of pretending they don't understand people, and they have physical delusions. So they have natures actually recorded that they can't afford discerned because the uses of them they can't afford discerned. Also, the prisons, people on off the state prison offices, same ones on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the locations near there, involved with identity thefts and frauds instances relevant, involved with predicate acts with databases on the campuses, intercampuses, intercities through time, vaccines, control of the mind. So someone get these people onto writing. So Connecticut interbranch, this is with, in the Weathersfield Police Department, there was a police chief years ago, and then it was for years a Cintron, and there's a Mazzucato bakery. I never had anything to do with you guys, but there was an exception one time. Only time there are two exceptions. One time I saw him at a web school, and the web school. Only reason I was there for 1 year, I did a football practice when I was in I did my senior year another time. The only reason I had to do the senior year a second time is because one of the speech teachers was involved. I never had a personal conversation with her. She's involved with like a Mike Pandolf and others with that have been involved with Central Connecticut State University since they were kids, involved with the intelligence community, where and how they have roles with and the military, and like private, like Cub Scouts, and people with medical. They have doctors with and foreign and domestic nurses cliques in their families involved with slanders, fake conversations, me, fake ties to me, fake natures ties to me. These are also people that plotted time where you're going to be with others tied to them, and then they pretend to know you. These are people involved, names associated with the World Trade Center attack, with the Ninth Circuit Court right next to it in Manhattan, too, for example. Hello, you guys. So serious things. They have parents throughout the country right to be upset, but they don't know how to defend themselves properly, because Americans have never had the short words used properly, where there was a predicate acts delivery system method against Native Americans and sickly distinctly against colonists, and that was sustained because while everyone was blaming that specifically to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And they knew that everyone would have to blame them on other things other than themselves when they're pretending to be able to speak for positive and negative in identities properly. And the method against every colonist and every Native American sickly non-distinctly, what it was doing and is doing was using where and how everyone everyone speaks through others, and where and how we are our value progression. Naturally. See, this is explaining where and how they knew that we would have to use identity ground locations, names, the names of other species. No, we're supposed to cultivate through its system what causes positive value nature progressions, action natures, which is our identity. People will pretend passion emotions. Oh, we wouldn't be able to drive. We wouldn't be able to do that. The only way that is true is through where and how our founders had to start a country before they had a country and before they had means too. And they had to hide their roles with it, not just through their lifetimes. They had to hide it long enough to where we would figure this out. To countries individually grouped and together, they cannot defend their logic individually grouped together and afford any person at any location, area, and state to use our actually inherent active progressive means that we could use together. In other words, we are a species body to use this power/might, which is greater than any might and power. It is surging through all things alone in even force, while as its course, like sayings. It teaches things but long. So we could be systems other than its own, but that will be forced from here, leath of IDs, more probably and demonstrably for space nature transfer. Nature being identity's relationship to positive and negative simultaneously and hyper simultaneously. See, but the hyper simultaneous is no longer allowed to lead. So all must supersede. So rather than, so they don't know how to speak for economic stability. So they pretend that success relative to contrast, and people doing this, speaking about success and money, they cannot afford us to use our actually inherent active progressive means with New York City. No, other countries, I'm not forgetting you simultaneously. The plan is to lack our species identity of volume. In other words, the ground locations were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, action natures by a breaching method that requires us to use phrases like criminal insidiousness and like criminal foreign influences. That does not mean that we have to blame other countries and or ourselves, even though that is true at the same time. As long as we're admitting it, then we could see what can't and how it can't. And we can discern that even if they won't admit it, as long as we follow mandated law. Someone should, in other words, when they say either defund the police or support the police, they're leaving out where and how the police and the courts are kept with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, killers, and that just standard criminal insidiousness nature with people's premises treatments, qualities of fact treatment nature, kept needed to hide the same sequences, fine act progressive lies together. That's what's actually recorded. So the news played a great role with all kinds of election crimes and with uses of defenses of the election, the big lie that they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They being having been employed against citizens and against the president sickly distinctly, against both of the presidents sickly distinctly. I mean, both parties' presidents. So they could keep them blaming, defending their qualities of fact keeping nature where they've been treating each other's names. They can't speak for what is president/chief because that way. They could only speak for president. They leave out the whole thing because those Native American rights, you can't pay that back by the only way you can pay that back is by the only way you can afford it is by the whole species on the same page at the same time. We're going to address the tactically natured identity, the grounds identity of relationship / S to itself. In demonstration of that, going to cause negative value nature progressions, acts of nature. We could enable humanity. We could, executive order. We all agree. No, executive order. We're going to make a circuit. People, there's all of a sudden homelessness goes away, changes the nature of things. See, we have a lot of industries that can't defend themselves and afford the proper answers because we have a whole bunch of experts that both sides have constituencies involved with. Psychology and psychiatry, the delusions rot. They're involved that with use of locations. See, this has been juxtaposed where the courts and where the police forms individually grouped and together. The executive branch has been a whole bunch of methods, a whole bunch of different, the same police departments, other police departments from intercities polluting. So then they stack chaos. So when anyone tries to investigate, they'll never get the right answer. So we have to trace things backwards. So I don't know this Gold, this Debbie Gold, and there's a Lee Gold. I never saw him in my life in person, and a former Mayor Gold, and however many family members they're involved with them now, and their neighbors where they used to live, and that's where the corner, involved with the people next to Fox Connecticut News, and next to WFSB, involved with wire crimes, Weathersfield Police, with the phones, and with the television news broadcasts. This is through administrations. This is intercities and interstates. The same ones, the same names that have been worse than internations. They also told lies to and or with, but mostly to the family members of some of the victims of 9/11. Specifically, being what I call it them doing with the identity theft, fraud / slanders with those attacking countries too, on off the campuses involved with them. I don't know Daryl Chandler, who pretended other when he's involved with a Daryl Chandler and a Joshua Stryker and an Eric Oliveri and a Craig Oliveri. I never had a conversation with Craig Oliveri in my life, and a Joshua Julian, and others are involved on off like Joe Aiello is involved on off Trinity College, on off child campuses, and with places in Cromwell and along the Berlin Turnpike. with names that he involved with federal crimes with judges and prosecutors and people that are with Weathersfield police that are currently foreign influence with him and his family. Also next to the campuses, like next to Buckley High School, is involved with this principal, former Mayor Gold. There are other mayors. See, everyone's being the police forums and the courts have been telling lies to mayors and or with them too, because they got their family members involved. The intercities, they have these election locations involved. They have all types of experts that can't defend themselves the way they're trained to and afford sane logic. So you have to follow mandated law for the interbranch switching names, forging names rules, punks. And make sure I get a response for the campus because there's more confessions from the principal child defender that you guys didn't even let me tell you yet. You guys pretend from things I type online. What's that have to do with a couple sentences I had on the phone with these people? Then they put fake emails to replace a whole bunch of messages on our answer machine. The principal child abuser had left. A phone conversations. They pretend they were email conversations. I wish I had an email with these people. Make sure I get an email response. I've been asking you for writing. Make sure you get a response and say you're sorry to Judge Napolitano. They have some creepy people that even time where people walk with the slanders of it, with the natures of the slander. Also recorded how they use consciously how they have types of right clicks, types of rights clicks that are offensively identity theft frauds roles with these little creeps like the from just Trinity College from my town. That's in Hartford, Connecticut, but I'm in Weathersfield. But intercities, they attach fake me, they have roles with attaching me to fake conversations with them, fake natures of ties to themselves and others. All exceptions are in demonstration of the same thing. These are people leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In that context, Ninth Circuit Court was proven. Post-dated documents have been shown to the Ninth Circuit panel of judges next to the Ninth Circuit Court, next to the World Trade Center right before the attack. That was proven after the attack. That led up to the 2006 part of the case, now in Connecticut, in Connecticut District Court, with the same names involved with other cases that I recorded and can show you that actually recorded involved with wire crimes with the news media, Weathersfield town offices. They have officers forging and switching names as a role where and how the judicial branch and the executive branches police forms grouped like where some departments are the same type of police from other departments and other police forms mixed with them and other locations and forensics locations they share roles with. They've been kept needing to hide the same sequence as fine active progressive lies together and with killers, people next to the body dumping spots because of where and how the investigators themselves are used remotely. So they're not just naturally being and having been knaves as qualities of fact, cheap nature, with evidence perception. Where and how they don't have money and funds. That's why this is the junk that we have for these kids had problems. They have the people with the kids prisons involved with these rackets with people attaching other kids to fake words. They're influencing their kids to go over and other people are the people they put their kids in charge of have them influencing them to go over and pretend they know strangers, make uses of locations like there's a Smith family with the Weathersfield Police Department and with the Weathersfield town offices, and there are Mendez police that are involved with wire crimes as Weathersfield police and with falsified police report roles, also with the principal child abusers campus and with the Weathersfield town offices, also with some people involved with guns and drugs, crimes and threats again and predicate acts against me, identity theft and frauds roles. Now, this is worse than extortion, too. This is since before the World Trade Center attack. These are also people with ties to the same house per confessions at various Connecticut boxing gyms. They all have all kinds of connections to the same house / SMI street, and the ones tied to the street over with the Smith family, also with the fire departments involved. They're pretending in other words, people want privacy. They brought this up. They were trying to get me arrested for their roles with untimely deaths on off Trinity College and with selling drugs at the corner with the guy who was involved with having me stay back, pretending I had a conversation with my ever kind of personal conversation with that speech teacher or the one the year after either. That with the guy with that corner, one of the these detectives involved with the names brought up and their extended cousins, they've got caught themselves in lies. So they started using roles with types of distinct types of abuses of children and elderly and uses of the elderly homes themselves and of programs with the kids simultaneously. They're keeping everyone needing to hide the same secret shit, find progressive lies. So it has something to do with their roles with Taekwondo places in Korea and Asian families, as the people that are involved with doctors from other countries like Italy and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and people involved with deans, involved with the corner of Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved through time with falsified police reports and identity thefts and frauds with judges and prosecutors. People pretending and drugs crimes with people pretending I'm immature too. Now as adults because they were involved with men and women when they were kids with identity thefts and frauds, and they were wicked immature. And then they were telling, I'm immature. I had nothing to do with them. I only know them when seeking me out with more and more confessions related to the life progression because they have these little interbranch like with O'Brien family associated, a whole bunch of people associated with O'Brien family and the Colo name with the Weathersfield police over the last months. Like 9 months ago, called up with confessions about a Colo family. They're starting to try and start fights, and they're keeping fights. And though they're trying to make people be nice to each other, so they can use that too, because they have insidious treatments of positive and negative. I've been asking you for a long time, fix the fake news, multi-front with the three branches of government. So we have three branches of government. We have the news, then we have killers, child abusers, and we have other patients and criminals of other natures, including people associated with the body dumping spots. They're all involved with the same locations and names brought up by the pattern of falsified police reports and no writing I've been allowed to respond to since before the World Trade Center attack. You're going to see the sick doctors. They have faking conversations with people. And with the ones that if you go to them to ask them to report things that actually recorded, these people, they have to lie. They have to lie. So these people are speaking about mental health, and they go, they're experts in the news, and but this is not a news. This is the theme of this show is half news, half it's news. Follow mandated law to separate me and others from the fake words, and get the politicians onto paper with the courts then, and with the police forms, because we have to examine how the branches of government individually grouped and together they have methods that are bound by a method. That's what's we shouldn't have to waste time with this. Could have told you American history and other countries' histories by now. Criminal insidiousness nature propagate was delivered by a pre-breaching message system. A predicate X delivery system method was also is also a criminal insidiousness propagation, a criminal insidiousness delivery system method. Criminal insidiousness natures of identities, like of positive and negative treatments, of other people's names treatments, of their own names treatments. They can't defend themselves and afford short words, spoke calm, proper. So needs to be pretend other. So follow mandated law for them online. Make sure that you guys tell Judge Napolitano and Judge Judy, all the online judges, Judge Joe Brown, they're hiding this from you guys. People who answer the phones, you interview me, the delusions rot, and they're involved with all kinds of rackets with the police firms, with the online policing. Oh, we're against hate crimes. You guys are forcing people to respond to you syntactically and then you're sequence shifting predators. You guys already painted yourselves a fake roles with the breaching method in cases. Then you want to speak for Jim Crow law. You can't even speak for Jim Crow law. You can't even speak for slavery. Simplest thing. A breaching method employed. What can't be defended, fact cheap nature wise, and anyone who's doing that at the same time. But they try to do it anyway. So they handed means to get away with defending themselves as fact cheap nature by a breaching method, the proverbial devil, but is worse than that and more finite than that. That's why it's about another invisible but still discernible. That comes with the invisible but still discernible and the hyper invisible but still discernible. And with our quality of diffusion. So thank you. YouTube.com/user/Romulus Wall. My name is Anthony Wall. And I hope you would press the little button subscribe to my when pressing the subscribe to my channel button, so you get all notifications. Because I have to put the cartoon software on a new computer, so it's taking me time. For the Little Rap Guy and Friends, Little Rap Guy and Friends are counter anti-archetypal criminal enterprise. They are simultaneously, as the black pupils, they are simultaneously a more sophisticated criminal roles that has the entire cartoon value nature system, countries A through Z, counter extorted. Everyone was already extorted. So now people of the cartoon humanity, A through Z, they're all extorted and counter extorted, but they're counter extorted to counter the original extortion and counter extortions of each other. They're all made, So the black pupils is an anti-archetypal criminal enterprise. And they're also one with no name. That is an anti-hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. The proverbial devil would be translated as a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. And the proverbial genie, I believe, regarding Islamic takes on the how individually grouped and together the countries have roles with criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments, identity treatments, time treatments, sciences treatments. See, the sciences were abridged from their actually having been revealed by nature itself, state, since before they were born. Vaccines tour. Attend. Republic's campus calls you home again. Remember, hear its name. Ultra. Religion. Legion. Species volume. Lift. Attend. Who will, until we're grouped, loud in to wake all then. Yeah. And then again, come evolution's fruits and gifts, means from nowhere. In fact, cheap nature oriented presented these means. We use our electrical engineering, humanities. Yes. Don't disbelieve. Who disbelieves? Get them to pick one name and sequence. I'll show you how they're lying.